and we talked about freedom of expression, right? And I think, in my spiritual awakening with plant medicines, freedom of expression is so important, but it's also it can be scary when you're expressing yourself freely. So there's a vulnerability in it. But I think when we start to express ourselves, it's to me it seems not just vulnerable, but it's freeing. We talked about it, like there's some freedom in that. So you're bringing your expression to the studio as well as. So I wanted to bring up one way that you like to express yourself is through shibari, right? And so it's called shibari, and I hadn't heard about it, and and I'll let you explain it. But I think you came in one day with some strings around your torso, and you were, I think you might have been at an event where you were talking about shibari. Can you just tell me a little bit more about shibari and what drew you to it?
Yeah, well, Shibari is actually originally it was a jutsu used in feudal Japan in order to tie prisoners, and so that was the original uses of it. And later on in the 17th and 18th century, it was more appropriated by what I guess would be considered level of BDSM culture back then. And nowadays, there's a lot of science behind it that actually shows how good it can be for your nervous system. Um, and it is tied to BDSM culture. Yeah, that just is a part of it. My purposes of incorporating Shibari and yoga together is again for a lot of very similar effects of what we get from a yin practice, which is a high degree of somatic trauma release. Also, teaching yourself to calm down in an uncomfortable situation or experience activates the parasympathetic nervous system. So you're activating that healing factor. So it can be a very healing experience, even within the BDSM community. If you're in the proper setting with the right people, you're able to get healing from that. But the flip
Hmm.
side is that if you don't have that awareness, then you can end up re-triggering yourself over and over again. So again, it takes that level of awareness. But my purposes are to kind of break it away from this traditional model of being over sexualized so that we can use it to explore sensation. And that's my whole kick in life. That was one of my main philosophies as an addict. That continues to be one of my main philosophies now is sensation and what can we allow ourselves to feel. And culturally here in America, we have an overarching ideology of avoidance against discomfort. We avoid anything that's uncomfortable, whether it be mental or physical, and or spiritual even, right? Because people have a lot of fear. Oh, I'm going to, a bad example, but maybe one relatable to other things is like, oh, if I do this one thing, I will piss off the god Poseidon and he will curse me so that my ship will never sail, or whatever, interpret it how you will. Um, a lot of fear and fear of pain. And ultimately you can't cheat pain, you can't cheat grief. These things exist and you have to process them. And the more that you stave that off, the more that you run away from that, the more it's going to build up. And then instead of being something that you can allow yourself to process in a controlled way, it's going to start affecting your subconscious in significant ways. Um, and so again, my purposes with Shibari Yoga are very similar to our yin practice, where we're allowing ourselves to explore sensation in a holistic manner. And some of it is uncomfortable, but if you can get past the initial fear, it can be a delicious experience that ultimately serves to benefit the nervous system in terms of regulation and to an extent, even cognitive behavioral therapy. Our neural pathways are already lodged inside of ourselves from our experiences. So ideas of trauma or extreme emotion, like those are held into the body, usually in fascial anatomy, but depending on the individual, it could also be stored in the muscular system and other places. But what I usually see is stuff stored in fascial anatomy. Which is why, I mean, you've been to our yin classes. There's somebody crying almost every single time, not from pain, but from being able to feel and express that feeling in a safe way. And it's a very powerful experience. I don't think I would be at my current level of sobriety, where I've been off alcohol for almost a year, and I quit cocaine a few years ago, and all that stuff. I wouldn't be at this level if I did not have obviously a therapist that worked with me for a very long time, community and support groups and all of that good stuff, and also the practices of yoga. And again, like teaching myself nervous system regulation and a significant level of somatic trauma release and ultimately therapy. Anyway, so you have these neural pathways already lodged out for behavior patterns, which we're both conscious and unconscious of. And again, when you are able to fully experience these trauma points and these higher emotions and redirect yourself from what your neural pathway wants to do, which is I'm going to go into stress mode, or I'm going to go into flight or fight or whatever, you're teaching yourself to stay calm in those moments. So you're redirecting those neural pathways, which is cognitive behavioral therapy.
That's beautiful, Alex. And just to maybe help some of the listeners that aren't, they're new to yoga and they think it's all movement, which are the asana portion. Another type of yoga, and there's several types of yoga, and sometimes it could be a type of yoga based on what your personality is or what kind of you lean towards. But
Ooh.
yin yoga, can you explain what yin yoga is? And I now am kind of, now that I know what it is, I see the connection between Shibari. But could you? I think you kind of alluded to it, where it's a little bit longer, slower, and you're feeling sensations that may feel discomfort. There's something about kind of like providing more space in our bodies and releasing
Yeah.
some tension.
So we do yin just slightly differently than what a traditional yin class might look like. Our model is holding the poses for a considerable amount of time. It's usually only 4 poses over the course of an hour, with maybe a 5-minute rebound in between each of them. And the purposes are okay. So it's such a big topic of anatomy. So when it comes to fascial body hydration, our fascial body produces hyaluronic acid. Hyaluronic acid is really great at absorbing hydrogen molecules. And so when these things are hydrated, then fascial bands can just glide together very smoothly. But when they're not hydrated, I think a really good example is sitting for long periods of time. You stand up and your hip flexors hurt. Or like we all have rolled over shoulders. So when we do some of the poses of just very basic shoulder openers, it can be a really revolutionary experience. And again, that's because when that is not well hydrated, then the hyaluronic acid will stick to fascial cells. So now instead of gliding together, they're creating friction when they move. I use this example all the time. I think of the old man sit up and sit down, where it just and it just is so painful. It sounds so painful, and you can see that in different ways. So a lot of the time, different movements or poses might be uncomfortable, they might be painful, but that's because we literally have to pry the cells open in order to restore a level of hydration. And that's in yin. You can get much deeper into that by either studying for yourself or taking some sort of deeper myofascial hydrating class. Again, one of my mentors, that is like her whole shtick. She has like a slip disc and all these things just over a lifetime of doing more competitive yoga. And you would not guess that. She is in such incredible physical condition, and the people that she's able to help are people in their 50s, 60s, 70s that have had surgeries, that have had injuries, that have lived whole lives and have been told, like, oh, you'll never be able to do these things again. And through her work as a myofascial specialist, you're able to restore some semblance of health and vitality and flexibility to them. And that's how, through working with her, that's how I'm able to work with older people.
Yeah, no, and the other interesting thing is when with a yin is that you mentioned about stored, people might get emotional and it might not
Hmm.
necessarily be like they're crying from pain. It's because they're releasing emotions. I've had, when you and I were working together, um, there was and I had some stomach surgery, and I think you were working on that area, and there was this knot that was released, and I later that evening had this like super like it went all over my body, this calming sensation, like some emotion or something got released. It felt really good. And I think we all, like, in especially in American culture, we're at computers all the time. We do certain things a certain way. Just everybody's going to have a buildup of fascia at some point. And I say, get into the yoga studio, or yeah, or work with somebody who works on fascia. That's so important to, address this as we get older, I
Hmm.
think, right?
Fascial body hydrating and strengthening is, I believe, going to be the future obsession of workout culture, especially fascial body strengthening. There's a lot, not a lot, but there are teachers. Chelsea is a wonderful example. It's like you wouldn't guess it, right? Because it isn't an overdeveloped muscular system, but then they are so fucking powerful.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
And Shibari, kind of
Mhm.
bringing it back in there, is a complement to all that because it's working on your fascia, correct? And
Yeah, there's multiple benefits, I believe, through my own experience and what I've studied and what I've experimented with, both with myself and I've just had the benefit of having very open-minded students. Um, that not only are you able to get into possibly deeper fascial hydration, nervous system regulation, all that, but even depending on the type of Thai that we are doing, you can even get into a pretty significant level of structural alignment correction. Especially, we have a few hypermobile students, and so the hypermobility you have to watch out for because their fascia is great and loose, but they can also very easily dislocate an arm or a leg. And so having the benefit of what feels kind of like an exoskeleton can also help them get deeper into correct physical alignment.
wow, so
Yeah.
much to it. So much
Yeah,
to it.
it's a lot. I mean, even again, like for me, it's about sensation. And in this culture, we tend to over sexualize a lot of things within our culture. And, even sensation is a huge part of that. And I'm trying to create a very safe, open space where, again, it's not sexuality, it's sensuality.
Yeah, we
We
have five
are,
senses, if not more, and
yeah.
being able to, and we have emotions tied to those senses, and maybe even tied into stuck emotion.
Yeah, I mean that's again even just getting back into the in practice or anything. These things that we have throughout life, traumas, high emotions, whatever, they'll again store themselves in your physical body, and you will feel them. You will feel that tightness, whatever it is. Even if we were to just like close our eyes right now and focus heavily on deep, deep breaths, like you will find where your body is holding on to something, right?